If you want to be a homeopathy therapist in the New Age, here's a little course you must learn. Misconceptions of homeopathy. Let's take an open mind look into homeopathy. Let's take an intellectual look into homeopathy. Let's take an enlightened mind look into homeopathy. It seems that homeopathy has developed an incredible emotional antagonism between supporters and detractors. So with an enlightened open mind and intellect, let's look into homeopathy. First, we see that there's in homeopathy a thing called the law of similars, where they say that like treats like. They say that fighting fire with fire. Now that's like treating like, but most of the time people usually use water. Well, where does this happen most in medicine? It happens most and has been proved in vaccination. Jenner, the father of vaccination, and vaccination comes from the word vacca, meaning from the cow. And Jenner was a homeopath. He thought, as he looked and saw the pustule symptoms of milk maidens that they got from milking a cow, and how that could cure the pustule symptoms of people who got cowpox. He worked and developed the basic idea of immunization, and he was doing it as a homeopathic principle. Immunization, vaccination, is like treating like, using a small amount of the natural substance that causes a disease to treat or prevent the disease, a thing that we like to call no-sode homeopathy. Medical doctors will go wild and scream when we start calling vaccination homeopathy, and homeopaths will yell and scream that the doctors do not use homeopathy when clearly that they do. So we can start our expose of the misconceptions with the proof that the emotions of both sides are the problem, and that a clarity of intellect, an enlightened mind, needs to look into this idea of homeopathy. Vaccination is clearly an example of homeopathy. Now, the dangers of that vaccination are using the toxins that are used to kill these microorganisms. Sometimes they're left over. Also, some of the dangers of that vaccination are using an inappropriate amount, inappropriate to what we are exposed to in day-to-day life. If you want to learn more, I did a video about this called Synthetic Drugs, Vaccines, and Autism. This will help you to understand and get a real good clarity idea. Homeopathy can make a safer form of vaccination, but it still is a vaccination, immunization, building of antibodies. When we look into the research, we will see that somewhere between 6x and 10x, we can get vaccination quality. We can give a 6x to a 10x of a substance and see immunological response and see antibody response develop in our patient. We do not see this if we use sugar pills or if we use the high C potencies or even the high M potencies. We see this in the X potencies, that there really is a way to use homeopathy as vaccination safely. But some homeopaths want to cling to the ultra-high dilutions, and that creates another type of misconception. There is strong evidence to show that homeopathy in vaccination does really work. But yet that would step on the toes of drug companies, which make vast amounts of money from the sale of their vaccinations. Where else do we see like treating like? Well, we see this in medicine and allergy desensitization. Medical doctors all over the world use small bits of an allergen to slowly desensitize an allergic reaction in the patient. This has been proved medically. Using small amounts of peanuts, they were able to desensitize peanut allergies, one of the most vitally dangerous of all the different allergies. And yet this could be done by using the homeopathic principle of like treating like.
6 months ago, young Michael Frost would have suffered a massive allergic reaction if he'd taken a bite from a peanut. Now the 9-year-old is able to eat the snack with no ill effect. He's one of 4 children taking part in a groundbreaking clinical trial. His mother, Kate, is delighted.
It was smaller than an eighth of a peanut, and he got covered head to toe in hives.
The trial at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, England, has given the children a tolerance to the nuts.
We definitely had some children who reacted to less than 1/200th of a whole peanut. These were very sensitive kids. We started by giving them that dose and working up very, very slowly to an relatively enormous dose of 800 milligrams of protein, which is the equivalent of 5 peanuts. And now we've challenged these kids to a further 5 peanuts and found they can tolerate it.
Food allergies occur when the body's immune system mistakenly sees compounds from foods as invaders and creates antibodies to fight them. Peanut allergy sufferers must avoid even the tiniest amount of food containing the nut. Extreme cases can lead to an anaphylactic shock, which can be fatal. It's the first time patients have successfully been desensitised to a food-related allergy. Jim Drury, Reuters.
To slowly desensitize the white blood cell reactions of the allergy from the mast cells. So allergy desensitization with small amounts of the allergen is still homeopathy, like treating like. If you watch the allergy movies from Immune, you will see and learn more about this. Medical doctors and homeopaths are so violently hating each other that they don't want to be classified together. But here, clearly, they are doing the same thing, using the principle of like treats like. Also, we will see that their violent emotions have really clouded the minds. Another place where homeopathy is discussed in medicine is the field of hormesis. Here, a small bit of a toxin is used to stimulate the organism to health. This was done in different works with radiation, toxins, and many other things to show that a small amount of a toxin could actually be a stimulant, another principle of the no-sodal homeopathy. There's widely different mindset between these two areas of the medical doctor and the homeopath. I have found in my vast amount of experience, having lectured for over 30 years to medical doctors and homeopaths around the world, a base idea. Traditional medical doctors use mathematics and get statistical science to make their decisions. To become a medical doctor, you have to pass your calculus and your physics and chemistry and etc. in high school. And people who have a like of numbers can do this. They become medical doctors. Where the homeopaths are math phobic, they're afraid of numbers. So they have a different idea. They don't look at statistics or science at that level. They like to look at stories. They have a much more emotional feeling level that they use to make decisions. So I found that these two camps can't really talk to each other because of the quality of their mind as how they make decisions. A basic principle of NLP, where the people that cannot understand each other cannot really see how the other one thinks. You see, with a lack of true understanding and appreciation of what other people are saying, they won't agree no matter what. These are two extremists, and extremists don't really accept the other person's idea. They ignore it, thereby they become ignorant. They get afraid of what smart people on the other side might do. And sometimes they have to agree to violently disagree. So we have a misconception of science. Homeopaths don't like to do it. They don't like to do statistics. They're afraid of numbers. But yet this is important. If you can't challenge or examine your magical thinking delusions, they can destroy you. You have to be able to look at these things. You see, some people fear science. And as a mathematician, I found it necessary to help to validate homeopathy. I helped to develop an international journal of the medical science of homeopathy, a peer-reviewed journal used around the world that has gone unchallenged for over 15 years, publishing thousands of articles showing double-blind, triple-blind, and a host of different quality studies proving that homeopathy does indeed work, however, also proving that there are misconceptions. In the movie that we did recently from the BBC on homeopathy, we were able to prove that stirring does not work as a homeopathic. If we stir the remedy, it doesn't work. Hahnemann used succussion. He started using smell compounds, and he had people smell because he found that he could stimulate the nasal pharynx. Later, he started to use remedies in dilution, and he made expotencies that he had to succuss. As time went by, his hand became very tired and sore from the abuse of the succussion process. This is violently striking the bottle of the substance onto a flat object, and he would use a Bible. After a while, he started to do nerve damage to his arm, so he moved to a C potency, then to an M potency. As he did this, he did not notice that he was getting less results because his age and belief prohibited him from seeing this. So we found out that the pills and the C potencies and the M potencies do not work as good as the X potencies. There is a principle of homeopathy that we can transmit this energy, and when I say energy, I mean informational state, that all of the molecules of different substances, such as belladonna, which makes you red as a beet, dry as a bone, mad as a hatter, that's its pharmacological action. When used in a small amount, it has the reverse principle. And the belladonna gets into the water and the alcohol and helps to shape that liquid crystal of water into the atropine belladonna compound, showing a bit of that goes into the nasal pharynx and helps to trigger the brain to turn on the anti-redness, anti-dryness, anti-madness. So the principle of like treats like works. However, according to the Ard-Schultz principle, as we've shown many, many times, this is a fact of poisons. What a poison does in a large dose, a small amount will have the reverse effect. This is the Ard-Schultz principle. Now, if we look at homeopathy, we will see reversal in all of the poisons. Snake venoms, scorpion venoms, spider venoms, a host of different things, belladonna, many different compounds, atropine, all different types of things like this, aconite. We find that when there is a poisonous type substance, what it does in its raw dose, a small amount will reverse this, and this is known as the Ard-Schultz principle of pharmacology. However, 75% of homeopathy is not using poisonous compounds. They're using herbal compounds. Herbal compounds where inside the natural compendium, we see exactly the same indications for use in the raw dose as in the homeopathic repertory when we look at the rarefied dose. 75% of homeopathy is not like treating like. It is not reversal of action. 75% and most of homeopathy is a blend of natural type medicine using a more dilute compound. What they really see here now, if you look at this, you're going to be looking at herbs that have the same indication for their tincture, herbal indication, as their homeopathic. Thus, homeopathy is not all reversal. It is not like treating like. That only applies to the poisons. Look at this. Over and over again, we're going to see that 75% of homeopathy is not reversal. It is not like treating like. It is herbal therapy used in a more rarefied form. So we've just exposed another myth. The major myth and the major misconception that homeopathy is all like treating like. It is not. And just how do the homeopaths react to this news? Well, the first thing that they want to do is shoot the messenger. The ignorant intellectual bigot of them all. Take a wild guess. Homeopaths, medical doctors, they all get into this. And some people just can't see things. Their head is so far up their own ass, they just can't see. And this messenger, I request, please, don't shoot me. The debate gets so hard that people want to strike out. Then debate becomes argument. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm trying to bring clarity and an enlightened intellectual mind to this field. We have to also look at the ultra-high dilutions. We've been able to see and prove that there is a memory effect of water. However, its memory effect is not as strong as the real stuff, because we were unable to show in any of the different studies anywhere in the world that we could get an antibody result from using an ultra-high dilution. All the studies that have tried to do that have failed. We've only seen homeopathy succeed at potencies between 6x and 10x. Here we've seen that a little bit, tiny bit of the raw substance can have an antibody effect and can thereby produce an immunization. So homeopathy has the answers, but not in the ultra-high dilution. Homeopathy has been proven to be successful, safe, and effective in making immunizations through the nasal pharynx. One of the other misconceptions that all of homeopathy is ultra-high dilution. That is also not true. That's another misconception. We next find that there's a misconception in using the sugar pills. The actual agent of the homeopathic transfer is this water molecule that gets its shape from the succussion process. When we dilute that water into the sugar pills, we dramatically lose much of the response. So the studies that are done on liquid homeopathics have much greater results than all the studies with the pills. When we actually do double blinds, we will find that the sugar pills really are mostly sugar pills. So as we look at this thing, we come to an idea of another misconception, Hering's law of progression or cure. The idea that you will cure from the inside out, or that you will go back through your different symptoms. This has never been proven statistically, and in many, many cases we see that it doesn't always come true. This type of an idea is not really a law, but more of a guideline. It is possible, but not really a law. So we have to revise our idea, because that is a misconception. We have another big misconception in the idea of energetic duplicators. Even though I make one, I have to admit it is not the same as homeopathy. I've been telling this story for a long, long time, because when we did Narcan double-blind studies, lo and behold, we found out that the duplicated remedies are mostly placebo-orientated. And now homeopathy is being killed by homeopaths who are not doing homeopathy. Instead of doing homeopathy, they're buying little devices, hitting a button, and duplicating a remedy, which is really not much more than just a glorified placebo. We've not been able to show that it has the energy states or anything. We're not saying it doesn't work, because the whole idea of placebos working is a science that needs to be studied. But when we actually come down to double-blind testing to find out whether the active ingredient is intent or belief, or whether it's in the pharmaceutical, then we really need to apply, and we really need to do justification. And when we do this, we find out that these duplicators just really don't work. And that homeopathy is being killed by homeopaths who are just not awakened to any type of level of science or statistical analysis. By using these strange homeopathic duplicators and things like homeopathic Saturn and homeopathic Berlin Wall and gunpowder, you see, homeopathy has become a myth, and people like to think that, but we have to look at it. And I know that we can violently disagree, but there are logics on both sides if we really look to it. As we look into homeopathy, we're going to see that the field of hoursodes, nosodes, isodes, sarcodes, imponderables, we have a fantastic repertoire of medicine, an incredible ability to really help people. Placebos do work, and that's part of the process. But we also have to realize that we have to qualify and study and do double-blind research. I was able to write the book to prove that there are powers of the mind, and that there's power in the intent, and that placebos really do work. You see, our verbal intellect is just a small part of the total mind. So we have to be able to look at this. And underneath the words, there are superpowers of the mind. We have to look at this, but they can be traps. There is powers of the human mind. It's incredible what the human mind can do. We've shown this throughout medicine. And the mind can do anything. It just takes time. And what if all the medications we take were placebo? What if the real primary effect of medication was primarily placebo? What if all the medications, their primary effect, this would be the death of the pharmaceutical medical dominance of the synthetic chemistry, and this would be the rebirth of homeopathy. Incredible. We carry placebos, but you'll need to have a fake prescription to get them. You see, the other side, these homeopathic people sometimes believe in crazy, wild ideas. They get caught, they get tied into it. As we need to not turn our back on statistics, but to embrace them. But statistics should not be our God. They should be a simple tool to help us use. There is a case for evidence-based medicine. We need to apply this. And as a very wise man once told me, lack of evidence is not good evidence against an empirical medical therapy. Lack of evidence is not a good evidence that it doesn't work. And having evidence does not mean that it isn't concocted, because there's an awful lot of modalities using concocted ideas of evidence, evidence that they've twisted and lied to about, such as Vioxx, a host of different types of drugs. You see, because these are really not working like we thought. We have now known that the synthetics really were decision-making processes because of profit and not for people. We now look at this incredible statistic where we're going to see that the prescription side puts people at risk. There's an incredible amount of damages and damage paid and damage sued for. Under homeopathy, natural medicine, we see that first don't hurt. This is the dictum. Hippocrates found the basic idea of homeopathy and like treating like, and this has been first don't hurt, the dictum. We have to be able to respect our freedom of choice, to choose. Whether we want to choose synthetic drugs or natural, we have to have freedom of choice in medicine, not to be forced on by other people, because some people just want to see the middle path. If we're doing the homeopathic interview, this is a complete operationalization of all of the symptoms of the patient to find out what makes them better, what makes them worse, to have a real deep idea of these things. So that is a base principle where we can use that to help with lifestyle education and an educational process to help people to learn to avoid the white deaths of white sugar, white flour, salt, and pork. These are the things that we need to work into a system of wellness with that interview, and to help make a whole new homeopathy, a combination of naturopathy, behavioral medicine, operationalization of ideas to help the patient know more about themselves. It is the interview process that helps us to understand the causes and the triggers and the networks, and how to really understand and operationalize. When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is correct, medicine is of no need. And we have to recognize that there are things in our diet that are killing people. Physician, treat thyself. As we look into degenerative disease, growing and growing and growing, we're going to see that we have to look back into the causes and how to help in medicine in a distinct way by reducing stress. Here in the books, we've discussed this in ultimate detail, to be able to teach wellness counseling, homeopathy, interviewing, and here in the ways of Hahnemann, we have to be able to look at that both of these sides of that argument have some right and both of them have some wrong. And finally, the last misconception is, who are the experts? Because it seems like the experts on either side of these fields hate each other, and neither one of them is really looking at the data, the science. Nobody's looking at these issues with an enlightened, open intellectual mind. There are silly people on both sides, and the so-called experts are mostly befuddled fools, clinging to their false beliefs and clinging to old ideas without truly challenging, seeing, or really looking at them. We need to be able to have a more open-minded approach. So I've tried to be doing this and tried to help, and I try to offer my services to help bring clarity and to study and unveil these misconceptions of homeopathy. We need a balanced, enlightened mind to see the value of evidence, the value of challenging false beliefs, the value of the placebo, powers of intent, and humility before the powers of life. With an enlightened scientific mind, we need to look into the evidence on homeopathy. And what are we going to see? Homeopathy debate has small minds on both sides. But if we really look into it, just what will we see? We'll find a middle path between the extremes of the pharmaceutical world and the homeopathic world. We're going to be able to see that there is massive evidence that low-dose homeopathic combinations do indeed work. Little evidence for ultra-high dilution sugar pills. That type of homeopathy, that ultra-high, there is very little evidence. The evidence tells us that the law of similars only applies to poisons or near poisons. This is an application of the pharmaceutical principle of Ernst Schultz. When we look at this, we're going to see that we've really made an idea that homeopathy is not all reversal. So the like treating like is just a small part of homeopathy. The evidence shows that homeopaths cling to false beliefs and they resist science and they resist statistics. They are mathphobic. There is little evidence to make Herring's observation a law. And there is massive evidence that complex homeopathics work, and the one remedy to Tybral has been definitely proven false. We've been able to expose many of the myths of homeopathy. There's evidence that water properly succussed has indeed a memory. Little evidence that ultra-high dilution homeopathy or sugar pills work. There is some evidence to this, but it needs to be studied much more intently. There is evidence that stirred homeopathics do not work, and no evidence that homeopathic duplicators work. In fact, there's evidence that shows that they do not. So we have to really look at the statistics and the idea of evidence. There is massive conclusive evidence that muscle testing, point probe testing for remedies does not work. Massive conclusive evidence that shows us that this is therapist manipulation. There is massive conclusive evidence that placebo pills work. They are safe, they are effective. Homeopathy works pharmaceutically at low dose and through intent at high doses, but homeopathy is always safe. Placebos do indeed work, but homeopathy at low dose is more than just placebo. But what if all the medications were primarily placebo? What if that was the primary effect of the pharmaceutical? Would that be the death of the pharmaceutical medical dominance and the rebirth of homeopathy? Could very well be. Because as we look into the energy of this substance of water, which is what we are, and that our bodies are made of atoms, we're going to find that there's empirical evidence that allopathy, or treatment of symptoms alone, is an illogical and ineffective way to practice medicine. As we look into traditional medicine, the empirical evidence shows that synthetic drugs are incompatible with the human body in some very small and some important ways, and they mostly placate symptoms rather than promote cure. So the very synthetics don't really work. The rate of iatrogenic doctor-caused disease has grown dramatically as a percentage as the synthetic drugs have grown. Profit over people drives the drug companies, and that's not what people really want to hear. People want to be safe. The drug companies are trying to take away our freedom of choice and force us to use more and more of their unsafe, risky drugs. Profit over people has taken over on this side of the case. As we've seen from the history of incredible sales of the synthetic drugs, but yet risks, not so much sales of homeopathy, but safety. We see a dynamic extremist approach of two extreme people that hate each other, and the debate goes into arguments, fights, and etc. We have to look for a middle ground. We have to be able to look for the bottom line. The difference between science and magic is that magicians usually know what they're doing. Stories are not verification. Stories are not validation studies. Testimonials are not validation. They're just testimonials. Science means we have to look beyond, and just the lack of evidence is not good evidence. There's many concocted things, especially around the synthetics. We need to seek a middle path in medicine. That's what I tried to put together. If your philosophy is not unsettled daily, then you are blind to the universe and what it has to offer. There's a paradigm shift that happens almost daily. We challenge our old beliefs. And we can save homeopathy. It's worth saving. But not the total of it the way it is today. We have to be able to look at with humility, enlightened mind, intellect, to find a middle ground, to hold and to teach people that homeopathy can be a safe primary source to work with our patients. And if that fails, we have to go towards the synthetics and the surgeries and the more harsh therapies. Homeopathy is a good example of a safe therapy that should be brought into medicine with the process of the interview, a process of health, a process of helping and sharing and caring, so that we can make things more safe and use those harsh drugs as an alternative when our natural methods have fallen. So this is Desiree Dubonnet offering you a little introduction into an expose of medical beliefs.